In this lesson, we're going to examine the origins and emergence of the native peoples of Oklahoma. Most courses begin, if you're going to talk about Native Americans, begin with a discussion of the Bering Land Strait.
Many years ago, right? when the world was covered in ice.
And there's scientific evidence for that. I mean, there's very, very strong connections between the native peoples of North America and the indigenous peoples of Siberia. And we do know that the land bridge existed, but one of the problems is that locked us into an understanding of the peopling of North America that was confined to the parameters of that land bridge.
Right.
And increasingly we find evidence that refutes that.
We were finding a lot of anomalies that you couldn't very well explain using the land bridge.
So archaeologists spent a lot of time trying to explain that away.
Right.
But now they're looking at a diverse suite of interpretations for the peopling of native North America.
And crazily enough, including boats in that conversation and things like that.
Exactly.
Right.
It may well be that more people came by boat than they did by the land bridge. But I think what we want to emphasize here is that we're going to examine people's own stories, their own creation stories, their oral tradition that's the foundation of native literary traditions, if you will. And it's in those stories in which the people of the native peoples of Oklahoma continue to perpetuate that oral tradition, and it's an incredibly important part of contemporary native society.
I think that's exactly right. And I think you're exactly right, too, about how it is that literature has long been in conversation with these oral traditions. Orature is another word that I kind of use to cut down on the syllables here and there. This is something I don't always do, right? But in talking about these sorts of oral traditions, we see that they're not all creation stories. They're not even all trickster stories, as wonderful and funny as those are. We're also going to be talking about the rules that surround who can tell stories and when they can tell stories, and the general environment in which stories get told. So what kind of information gets transmitted through them? We come to mean much more than just a creation story. So what other kinds of stories are we going to need to consider as we start off here?
Well, in societies that didn't have writing systems, all of their information, all of their experiences, their history, their insights into the natural world were all perpetuated through oral tradition, by word of mouth, in very real terms. So what we have embedded in that oral tradition are worldviews, the ways in which native peoples organized the world and made sense of the universe around them. So that we have very complex taxonomies that are obviously based on years and years of critical observation of the natural environment. We have explanations for the unexplainable, so supernatural phenomena, explanations for weather events, celestial events, meteor showers, comets.
You're talking about some science, in essence.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's important to remember that native peoples built upon the experience of the past generations, but that information has to be perpetuated and passed on in one way or another.
One of the things that I'm always interested in is how those oral traditions also communicate values, how they communicate histories that are both personal and communal, and how it is in general that they in many ways become a kind of cultural repository. So this is a great big pool. Maybe we ought to dive into it and take a look at some people telling their own stories.
Absolutely. It's so incredibly rich. And each time I hear a story, I can't hear it enough. Every time I hear it, I learn something new. And that's one of the great things about oral tradition, I think.